Hi everybody, welcome to the January Supper Club. As you know, we're doing a series on reimagining well-being based on Dr. Jason Whitehead's adult education series we had here at the church. And we took the first 2 months, November and December, and did kind of a broad overview, looked at reimagining and the word well-being and unpacked those two. And now, over the next 4 months, we're going to look at 4 specific areas of well-being: social, mental, spiritual, and physical. And this month, we're starting with the spiritual. So, Clover, what do we mean by spirituality?
Let's start by defining what we mean by spirituality, and there are ways to get at this understanding of spirituality. But let's start here, that there's a trust that as a human you have a trust that there's a transcendence, a transcendent being or a higher power or love, that there's something more than us going on in our reality. Spirituality also helps us ask questions of purpose and meaning, both as individuals and as a collective. Spirituality understands and values relationships, relationships with others, with ourselves, and with God, with the transcendent. Spirituality comes from this root word spiritus, which means breath or energy, life energy. So spirituality comes from this enlivening force that drives us toward meaning and question asking and making purpose in our lives.
Nice.
So how does spirituality and a spiritual essence impact our overall well-being, contribute to it? So again, spirituality gives us a sense of meaning and purpose, even in suffering. And I think this is really key to not only the pandemic, but to so many things in our lives. So we are seekers of trying to understand what is meaningful and what the purpose is, and even in suffering. Spirituality, our spiritual lives, gives us greater potential for coping with difficult things in our lives, coping skills. People who claim to understand themselves as spiritual beings, have spiritual practices, belong to spiritual communities. The science shows that we have better health and live longer. And of course, we have community. Spiritual community is developed often around one's spirituality, and we know that community helps keep us safe and emotionally and mentally healthy.
Dr. Kathy Kelsey was the presenter for that week's adult education series on spirituality. She's the dean of the chapel at the Iliff School of Theology and Spiritual Formation, and she laid out 3 movements that come out of the contemplative tradition of Christianity, from our monastic tradition, from the Desert Fathers and Mothers. And those 3 movements are, 1, the act of letting go the tight grip that we hold, thinking we're in total control or wishing we were in total control of the different aspects of our life, learning to loosen our grip on that. And when we do, we can begin to see things more clearly. That's called illumination in that contemplative tradition. And when we see things more clearly, then we see our sense of unity with the whole, our connection to each other, to God, to ourselves that Clover was just talking about. So those kind of 3-step movements is what she went into. It's really interesting, and we'll put the link to it. She did a little metaphorical exercise to explain the letting go that was really helpful. She said, take out your keys, which I'm going to do here. And she said, if you're holding, your keys represent something you care about, right? Your car, your house. And she said, if you hold them, if you're gripping tightly, and if someone says let go of them, I won't do it now, but if you were to let go, they would drop and you'd lose them, so to speak. They'd go away from you, right? And so we're less likely to do it if that's what we think it means to let go. But she said, well, just turn your hand this way. And now if I say let go, and it's just there in your open palm, that opens a different invitation to how to hold something loosely, where you can still see your keys, you still have the things in your life, but you're not gripping quite so tightly. And that was a really, really helpful metaphor, image for me. So we'll put that link there for you. I think you'll find it helpful. So that then again leads to the seeing things more clearly, which then if we really saw how the world really was, we would see that God is a part, that we are all held in this great love, and that's what we think spirituality, brings. She had some tools.
Yeah, she offered 5 tools to help us with this. I'm going to lift up one of them that we found really helpful. And she says that reframing feeling lost as normal to be human and the human experience is really helpful, because we all have these wilderness experiences, or feeling lost and uncertain or disoriented during times like the pandemic. And instead of resisting and reacting to that feeling of loss or lost, that we say this is part of life, this is part of the human experience. And then I would say that's how we then begin to make meaning, go into that next movement.
We've all gotten better at accepting that it's okay to feel lost right now in different times in our life emotionally through all of this. We're in new territory, and just that reframing really helps to get us out of that gripping. This was her point, is to, if we can let go a little bit and loosen up, we're in a better position to see God in the world. And that's really, at the end of the day, what we think spirituality brings to our well-being overall, as opposed to the physical or the social or the mental, is this reframing where God is included in the picture. And so therefore, anything that we have to go through, the suffering in our lives, is a part of life, but it's all held within that great love, that deeper love. That's where we're born out of that love. We're made for that love. We're made to share that love with one another. And from that clarity, we're able to handle really difficult times like this.
And as Christians, out of our own Christian tradition, our narrative is about a Messiah. God came in the flesh and went through the crucifixion. And so suffering was a necessary part of the story of God, the story of Jesus, the story that we subscribe to. And through the crucifixion, new life comes. And so the crucifixion is part of our story. And so therefore, we can trust that it's part of being human. It's part of the life experience.
It's always struck me how powerful it is that our central symbol of our faith is an image of suffering. And that if we can trust that Jesus went there, that God is there in the depths of any suffering that we go through, that there is another side to that.
Yeah,
and that's a
there's
powerful
redemption.
message.
This pandemic. Some questions for you for your evening, for your supper or your brunch or your coffee, however you are doing this. There are 3 questions that you can take on. One is, how has the experience of the pandemic changed your spiritual life or your understanding of God? Is there a way to articulate how this pandemic has changed your understanding of your spiritual life? 2, how has not being in church or being able to engage in church in the same ways during the pandemic impacted your spiritual life and the way that you live that out?
And the third one is about just your spiritual practices. What's been helpful through the pandemic for you? Might be, more walks. We certainly had more times of isolation, so therefore maybe more quiet time in your life that you've had to journal or to pray, different things. So maybe sharing what's worked for you and maybe what hasn't worked so well.
Right, during this time.
Okay.
That's good. We wish you well. And again, the link to the series on Sunday mornings that Jason Whitehead facilitated will be in the email with this video. We wish you well.
Okay.
God bless.
Have fun. Bye-bye.